What's up, everybody? Sean and D-Man here, and welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are doing great. Hope you guys have yourselves a great week. Hope you have yourselves a great weekend. We are back here on both Rumble and the Nerd Talk channel to talk some Star Wars. So, couple the other week, I believe it was, I think almost 2 weeks ago or so, um, Screen Rant had an article come out um, with I don't know why we're still talking about the Acolyte, but they came out with a title talking about the Acolyte. There were some 10 new details. Um, was basically the title, and I think they had some quotes from Leslie Henlin. Um, yeah, and obviously, if you've been around the channel for a good portion of time, you would have heard my opinions of the Acolyte, where I did not like it. It just wasn't a very good show or anything like that. But one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to go through the article. They have 10 different facts, so we are going to check that out. Um, let's see. Let's pull this up. Um, all right, so this is the article. All right. All right, so 2 years later, we're still learning 10 new details about Star Wars' most divisive series and its canceled future. There's not a future with it. It's not coming back. But anyway, all right. So let's just get into it. So right here. All right. So 2 years after its release, The Acolyte remains one of the most divisive Star Wars projects of all time. Set near the end of the High Republic era, the canceled Disney Plus series explored the Jedi Order at the height of its power while introducing a major dark side conspiracy. Interestingly, the Acolyte's creator, Leslie Halen, did reveal some key details about the canceled Star Wars show and its intended future, answering rapid fire questions during a segment on an episode of the George Lucas Talk Show. Here's our breakdown on each of Headland's responses, confirming and or debunking major theories, as well as potential significance of a few times she has of significance of the few times she declined to answer. So this ought to be good. This ought to be interesting. So let's get into it. All right. So first up, we may check this out. Maybe I don't know what is this.
You project an image of goodness and restraint, but it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps.
We may check that out. But anyway, so the first one up, number 10. Did Mother Coral survive? Yes. At least that's what it. I'm pretty sure she survived just by the way that the show acted. I think it did, or I think she did. All right, so let me make sure. All right, so one of the first confirmations that Leslie Headland was the revelation that Mother Coral survived the events of the Acolyte, which was pretty obvious. They definitely intended her to come back in season two, especially the major flashback and confrontation between the Jedi and the Force witches of Brendok when the twins Osha and May were still children. Unlike her fellow sisters, Coral transformed into smoke and was not seen again in the series. Combined with the confirmation from Headland, it feels safe to assume that she would have returned in future seasons, perhaps even reuniting with Osha and or May. Yeah, it was pretty obvious that she was going to come back in a planned season two of the series. So that's not like a huge surprise. So number 9, does Yoda help Venestra's Jedi cover up? Get out of here. I don't know. Jesus Christ, freaking ads. All right, the ending of the Acolyte saw Jedi Master Venestra framing Jedi Master Soul as a rogue Jedi responsible for the killing of all the others, a means of protecting Jedi Order's reputation amid the growing attentions of the Galactic Senate. Likewise, one of the show's final shots saw Venestra meeting with Grandmaster Yoda. Thanks to this podcast episode, Helen confirmed that Yoda would have helped Vern and her cover up, showing us yet another moment where desire to protect the Jedi Order led to the dark side choices. Just like when we see from Yoda during the prequels and the Clone Wars, with the decision to make Jedi Knights generals and commanders over the Grand Army of the Republic. Although Yoda is often quite portrayed as the Order's major moral compass, it seems as though aiding Vanessa would have been the start of the Order becoming compromised and eventually more complacent in the prequels, falling prey to its own hubris that paved the way for the revenge of the Sith. Um, I think no, I don't. That's kind of stupid. Now there are some probably examples you can point to, like for instance, um, which I'm no, I don't. You can probably say yeah, the Jedi got complacent, and but a lot of it still had to do with Palpatine orchestrating things from the shadow. Like the Galactic Republic had no generals or anything anybody like that to lead the new army, so it had to be the Jedi. Now, could the Jedi have refused? Yeah, they could have, but I think Palpatine would have found a way regardless to get the Jedi involved in the war because he needed them in the war to do the plan, to do Order 66. Because I don't know. That seems like, I don't know. So, um, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. That seems like that's really stupid. I just don't agree that Yoda would go along with covering up this situation. I don't know. No, I don't know about that one. So number 8, did Venestra Light Whip create Chimera Scar? Hmm. I think a lot of people assumed yes after seeing the whip itself. Helen also confirmed that Venestra's unique and signature light whip was indeed responsible for the scar on Kymar's back. Supporting several fan theories, the Acolyte did indeed allude to his dark side past with the Jedi, as well as the implication that he was once the apprentice of Venestra herself prior to a major falling we can assume resulted in Kymar's injuries. Or This confirmation further strengthens the idea that the story of Kymar, aka the Stranger, represents someone who rejected both the Jedi Order and the Sith, choosing a third path entirely in the Star Wars galaxy. I mean, so one of the things I somewhat come around on in terms of Kymar, because I actually kind of like the character. Like the show was bad, but there was actually some interesting things or interesting people in the show. Kymar was definitely one of them because would you have counted? Oh, man, I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. So I don't know because I think people talk about why Count Dooku. He's technically a Sith, but his eyes don't turn yellow like you see with Palpatine or Anakin or Darth Maul. And so, but yeah, this was always an assumption. Like after people saw the whip, uh, in the season, people were like, "Oh, that's probably the whip. It probably came from that." So that just makes just a lot of sense with that. So I'm not really surprised by that answer. So Number 7, what is Ki-Adi-Mundi's actual age? Now, this was a big controversy for sure when the show came out, because Ki-Adi-Mundi species, from what I understand, they have a very short lifespan. And so one of the things they do, or at least the Jedi Order allowed Ki-Adi-Mundi to do, was go back home and basically have a bunch of babies. Because his species lifespan is short, from what I'm understanding. There was a big controversy about it, you know, because Wikipedia changed stuff, and it was just like a huge thing. So it was really 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 crazy. Um, let's see. Um, let's see. Sorry, I gotta get a new keyboard. Let's see. Um, sorry about that. But yeah. So when this says, one of the biggest debates and gripes among the hardcore Star Wars fans was the appearance of the prequels, uh, Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi and the Acolyte in earlier and very minor Legends material. Mm. Jedi Master had a much later birth date, meaning Ki-Adi-Mundi shouldn't have been alive during the Acolyte. Yeah, that's part of it. However, Hedlund confirmed in this new podcast appearance that Lucasfilm Story Group approved the character's inclusion all the same, so long as he wasn't yet on the Jedi High Council. That kind of adjustment isn't unusual in Star Wars canon. For years, Legends continually can and has been rewritten in favor of newer storytelling efforts from Disney slash Star Wars. Yeah, that's true. They have retcon stuff time and time again. Because what was it? Because originally, like for instance, the Clone Troopers, Order 66. Originally, I think people have talked about the clones knew about Order 66, but it got retconned later to have inhibitor chips. So like the first time I watched Revenge of the Sith, like the whole inhibitor chip thing was, I don't think was around at this time at all. So you're watching these clone troopers that have fought with the Jedi for over 3 years just suddenly turn on them, and then Clone Wars season 6. No, season 5. No, it was season 6. I think it was season 6. Um, we get introduced to the inhibitor chips and stuff like that. So, but yeah, this was like a big controversy because like, how is he? Because this is like, I think a, a couple hundred years before the events of the Phantom Menace. So how was like Ki-Adi-Mundi still alive at that point? Because he wouldn't have been born yet to be in both the Acolyte and the events of it. So um so yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Hold on, get rid of that. Alright, so let's see. Was Kymar a true Sith? I mean, like when he was talking to Soul, he was like, "Oh, you might call me Sith," but he didn't really. Um, I don't think he. I guess we didn't really see much to like definitely say he was a Sith. You could probably say he was like a dark side user, but probably not a Sith. So, um, let me see. All right, so let's see what we got here with this one. Confirming what we all largely suspected, Hedlund said no when asked if Kymar was a true Sith. The Acolyte, Kymar, aka the Stranger, told Soul that the Jedi might call him a Sith, though that is not what he was. He was, despite his use of the dark side. Despite his connections to Venestra and apparently Darth Plagueis, Karmar was something entirely different, something else entirely. Likewise, we've since learned that there were direct and intentional elements that were put into the show to imply that Karmar might have been the first Ren, founder of the Knights of Ren, years before Ben Solo would come to lead the group as Kylo Ren in the sequels. Yeah, that was another series. Yeah, that was definitely like another theory that I saw that people were talking about, like him potentially being a Knights of Ren, because I think somebody I know was talking about like how they could hear Kylo Ren's music over Kymar's. So was there something actually romantic between Osha and Kymar? I bet she says yes. I'm curious to see what this answer is, but I bet she says yes. When asked about the relationship between Osha and Kymar, if there was something actually romantic between the two, Heslin declined to give a direct answer. Nevertheless, there was a clear and compelling chemistry between the two as Kymar sought to make Osha his new pupil in the Force. Had the Acolyte continued, perhaps Osha and Kymar's bond would have developed into more of a complicated and a simple student-teacher dynamic. He also It's also possible that by refusing to clarify, Hedlund perhaps wanted to avoid revealing plot lines that might still appear in future Star Wars projects. I doubt that. Would Acolyte have shown show how Darth Plagueis learned to create life? Another key no comment answer from Hedlund involved Darth Plagueis and whether the events of this show and Osha and May's unique conception and status in the Force were how the Sith learned to create life, a feat we know he was capable of, as we confirmed by Palpatine's Darth Sidious in Revenge of the Sith. Because the Acolyte explored unconventional forces techniques with the Burndok witches, many fans wondered whether the show might have revealed the origins of Plagueis' knowledge, something that would have perhaps been explored in future seasons. As such, Hedlund's refusal to answer one way or the other suggests there might be narrative plans for Plagueis in the works with Lucasfilm in the future. After all, Hedlund was notably cautioned before the questions began not to give anything away that might become something down the line. Yeah, that was another thing too, because you're on Brindok and it's all full of witches and stuff like that. Um, Obviously there's no male there to conceive with. Where did these kids come from? And so it's yeah. um how did Osha and Kamara factor into Palpatine's original story? Hedlund also declined to explain how Osha and Kamar's future might have connected to Palpatine's eventual rise as Plagueis' apprentice. Kamar seemed to be experimenting with new dark side philosophies and seeking new pupils like May and Osha, ideas that looked to have gained the attention of Darth Plagueis. Seeing as how we see the Sith Lord observing Kymar and Osha in secret before the end of the final episode. As such, the show might have been building toward the origins of the Sith plot that ultimately led to Palpatine becoming a Sith Lord ahead of the prequels. Will Darth Plagueis return to the Star Wars screen? I'm going to probably say no, but we'll see. Another question Hedlund declined to answer was whether Darth Plagueis will return in future Star Wars projects. Perhaps one of the biggest questions Star Wars fans have after the show's cancellation, whether they like the Acolyte or not. We can only hope that Hedlund's decision not to answer is due to Lucasfilm having plans for the key dark side character in some other form beyond what was originally intended with season 2. All right, last one. How did Yoda learn about the rule of two? The final unanswered question from Hedlund involved whether the events of the Acolyte would have been how Yoda eventually learned about the Sith's rule of two. By the time of the prequels, Yoda clearly understood the structure of the current Sith Order, despite their existence in the shadows, and most Jedi acting under the belief that the Sith had been extinct for centuries. Regardless of Headland's lack of confirmation, it does feel likely that had the Acolyte continued, it might have explored the moment when the Jedi began to suspect the Sith were still active, especially if Yoda did indeed help Venestra and she potentially divulged the truth about her former apprentice. Okay, so that was a lot. That was a lot to read. So that was all right. So that was all these 10 new details that we learned about the Acolyte. I mean, eh. It is gonna be curious to see on what happens in that regards, whether down the line with some of these plot, like how did Yoda learn about the rule of two? Um, will we see Plagueis again? There are some like little things about that, sure, that be questionable. Or not questionable, like people might have questions about, but overall, it is what it is. I don't really care for the article. I thought it was an interesting read, and I just wanted to, because I had saw Star Wars Theory react to it, but I don't think he reacted to the whole thing. I think he only reacted to some of it, and then I was seeing discourse about it online. So I was like, okay, let me check this out and see what this is about. But yeah, guys, that is relatively it. Thank you for hanging out. If you are new, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Rumble, hit that follow button, comment below. Check out both channels for more content. You can find all my content and more in the description below. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Y'all have a good one.